Shabbat Shalom. I've been thinking a lot about the rhythm of the year. I suppose it has something to do with the fact that school is back in session for so many people, and that school year tends to be a powerful indicator of the rhythm of the year for students and teachers and parents and grandparents of students. But then there's also the rhythm of the year that takes place based on the seasons, and maybe we don't feel that so much in Los Angeles, but we're aware of it if we've lived anywhere else, or even if we start to see certain subtle changes in the air, in the temperature, and in the colors that are around us. Or maybe your rhythm of your year has to do with when you've taken vacations recently and the kind of pre-vacation pace and the post-vacation rhythm that is different. Or maybe, just maybe, you are involved in a synagogue or synagogue life, and the rhythm of the year takes on a different kind of meaning, and that is the rhythm of the Jewish year. You might recognize this from the time that it takes to prepare your home for Passover, or the feeling that the high holy days are so ridiculously early this year, and they really are early this year, but the good news is next year they'll be late, so that is a nice bit of good news, if you like them being late. We are only, right now, a little more than a week out from Slichot, which is the beginning of the High Holy Days season. So in terms of the rhythm that is built into Jewish life, and in terms of the rhythm of the Torah portions leading up to the Jewish New Year, that means that we are at Ki Tavo, Parshat Ki Tavo, and last week we were at Parshat Ki Tetzei. Now, everything in Jewish tradition works hand in hand to create the moments that follow. And so I want to share with you some thoughts about both of these portions together because I believe that they give us some insight into what we are supposed to be focusing on right now as we enter the new Jewish year. Parshat Ki Tetzei means when you go out, and Parshat Ki Tavo means literally when you enter. They're two sides of the same process, even if they might sound sort of similar to one another. We have the leaving of one place, and then we have the entering into another place. And when we celebrate Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, while we are not talking about leaving physically a land and entering another land, we are metaphorically doing both of those things. We're leaving the place or the mental space that we've been in, and we're entering into the space of a new year with all of its infinite possibilities. We know that there is so much to think about when we consider leaving a place. There is so much to remember in our brains, so much to think about the past and figure out about this time that came before. And we know that there is so much to think about when we consider entering a place. And there's also a liminal space, a place in between, a glimmer that is neither leaving nor entering. And it's not an easy place to inhabit. It's a space that's full of anticipation and expectations and goals on the one hand, and maybe some regrets and loss from the past on the other. The space in between is fraught with tension and perhaps also some discomfort. And it's a place where we tend to feel alone. But there are two seemingly unrelated verses that show us so clearly that we are not alone in this at all. Among all the rules and the laws of Ki Tetzei, last week's portion, we see a statement about war, about a battle. The statement begins, when you, an Israelite warrior, take the field against your enemies and your God delivers them into your power and you take some of them captive, and I'm going to stop there. So I want you to put aside the literal idea of taking someone captive and see this as, for a moment, as a metaphor, the way the Baal Shem Tov, a spiritual teacher, great spiritual teacher of ours, does. He sees this not as capturing people, but holding on to ideas. He says, even from one's spiritual enemies, one must capture captives. Anything negative in a human being or in the world can be exploited for the good if one can derive a lesson in it, lesson from it in the service of the Creator. In other words, even from people whose values are diametrically opposed from yours, you can take lessons and you can use them for good. Now, Rabbi Zusha of Anipoli explains that he learned 7 lessons from, of all things, a thief. Okay, number 1, what the thief does, he keeps to himself. That's a pretty good character trait, to be able to hold onto information and keep things private and keep things to yourself when you need to. Number 2, he's willing to take risks to attain his goal. Number 3, she does not distinguish between major and minor things, but takes equally exacting care of each and every detail. Number 4, she invests great effort in what she does. Number 5, he is swift. Number 6, he's always optimistic. And number 7, if at first she fails, she is back time and time again for another try. Those are pretty good lessons to learn from, of all things, a thief. And from all of these things, we learn that when you are leaving a place or a space or a year, you take with you the gems of the past. Even horrific things, even negative things can be transformed into good if you know where to look. Now, on the other side of this, when we enter Ki Tavo, this portion has the famous phrase that we repeat at the Passover Seder, Arami Oved Avi, my father was a wandering Aramean. He went down to Egypt and he lived there, few in number and becoming a great nation, powerful and numerous. There is something unique about the Jewish people. Our peoplehood was not created when we entered a new land or developed a language or culture. It was in the crush of slavery and then in the receiving of Torah that we were formed into a people. So we recite the story again and again and again, and our portion tells us that we need to recite this story again and again and again about the Egyptians ill-treating us, making us suffer, and subjecting us to hard labor, and about us calling out to God. That is the story that we reiterate again and again and again. So when we leave a place, we take with us all the things that we learn from the dark moments, and when we enter, we tell that story again, relying not on the plenty and the goodness that's all around us, but on empathy built on experience. The people we became, the nation we became, was built on self-reflection and awareness, and empathy, and the ability to build an extraordinary future out of the brokenness of the past. Now, those are lessons I know we can carry with us into the holy days in just a few short weeks. I wish you Shabbat Shalom, and I wish you, as we embark upon this holy day season in the month of Elul, Shana Tova.